All right, we are back live. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to the Proud Masculine live stream Wednesday night. Just as promised, a return guest, Lysander Caligo, to finish up his mind-blowing, beyond interesting story that we heard part one of. And I promise y'all he'll be back. I promise y'all would love the second half. It doesn't get any less interesting. It keeps getting better and better. And not just for his own experience, but what he's learned and what he's done. And now where he's at with coaching and directing young men to the path of true masculinity and manhood. And I'm really not a fan of using all the phrase of masculinity, femininity, but it is. I don't know what else to call it. And that's what this country is devoid of, and they're trying to absolutely do away with in society today, especially in the West. And luckily, we have guys like him that are coming behind us to do all the cleanup. So how have you been since we last talked?
I've been great. Just doing my thing. Before I get into the story and kick back off where I left off, just the big thing that I've kind of learned over the years, obviously, as you know, I've been in the space for a while, did a lot of talking online and tried to do a lot of coaching, but I really think that the biggest thing with everything is just action. And some of my last live streams that I did, I've kind of created a bit of a new focus for men of what men should be focusing on. I said it was 3 masculine disciplines that men needed to focus on moving forward. This is right when COVID was kicking off. And I said it needs to be lifting, fighting, shooting. You got to get ready. You got to get prepared. You got to focus on that. And obviously, the guys that we were a little bit more associated with in the past are still focused more on dating and game and all that other stuff. And I mean, that's where the cash cow is. It's not sexy to show up and tell people, hey, let's change focus and let's start focusing on you becoming more of a warrior and focusing on those masculine virtues and those masculine disciplines. And it really hit home for me when I said that, because I said, you know what, this is the direction to go. And there's no better way to work a philosophy than to live it. And that's kind of been the last 3-4 years of me focusing, is that lifting, fighting, shooting, and I would even say swimming as well. As weird as that sounds, I can kind of go over it because I'm now the owner of Deep End Fitness Scottsdale, which I feel is a program that's absolutely phenomenal for shaping people. So that's where I'm at. Things are good.
Good. You look great, by the way.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, I see you in your pictures and group pictures, dude. You stand out.
Thanks. I mean,
Kill it.
I try, right?
That's the only way you get it. It ain't just going to show up, brother. I hate to tell you. Ain't nobody handing out fucking God-like physiques out there. You got to go learn that shit.
For sure. Absolutely.
So I think we're going to cut through the frills, the brainstorming questions. I think we're still hot from last time, to be honest with you. So we left off in your experience in Afghanistan. We went all the way from childhood to military through your crazy battlefield experience, heroic battlefield experience. And so now we're going to pick up on you coming home. So take us through the tail end of where we left off, just as a refresher, and you could go right into.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a bit of a long story, but I mean, I'm never short a long story. So essentially what happened was, after that day, I got blown up. I got blown into a wall. I went through literal hell on earth during that deployment. And when I came back to base that day, I had some marks and some things that had happened to me. I got burnt, like I said, from that Valen battery and all that stuff, and showed up back to base. And when I walked back into base that day, the colonel and the chaplain, who was a full bird in the Navy, they call them a captain in the Navy, they were waiting for me. And they had already kind of heard over the radio the things that I had done. One of the people, I believe it was that sergeant that was yelling at people to get up and move, he had reported back to command, essentially saying that I had gone mad. Not mad in a bad way. That's just how the Brits say it. They said, I was just going crazy. I was working hard, and some of the things that I had done had gotten back to them. And first things first, the colonel walks up to me and he says, "Hey, son, I heard what you did out there, and there's going to be some accommodations coming down for you. So I want you to be on the lookout for that." And then the next thing he said to me was, but I need to let you know firsthand that your buddy Justice didn't make it. And I looked at him and I said, yeah, I had a feeling that was going to happen. And I said, in all honesty, I'm kind of glad. And he said, I understand. And what they did essentially was they brought me into the medical tent where Justice's body was still there. And they let me kind of spend a little bit of time to process and kind of hang out and get checked over and looked over. I still probably had about 3 or 4 months in the deployment left. And I got a phone call essentially asking, from my team leader saying, hey, do you want us to pull you back? We heard what you did too. The colonel had asked for you to receive a pretty prestigious award. That's all that was said to me. And I got a phone call from another buddy from a different area. And he's like, hey man, I heard what you did. Word has it that you're going to be written up for a Bronze Star, Silver Star. What you did was nothing short of heroic. Know that. So that kind of lit another fire under my ass, to be honest with you, because what was going through my mind at that point in time was my legacy. As crazy as that sounds, like my legacy as a warrior. And I kind of looked at that award too as a little bit of a Band-Aid, right? To kind of like give credence to what I had gone through that day and what I had done. And in all honesty too, it's one of those situations that it's a once in a lifetime type of thing that you can either arrive to or fail from. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not something that's going to happen every day. There's probably no other situation in life that's going to occur where that's going to happen, unless of course I deploy more and do other things. But even then, you never know how the tides are going to turn. So I routed out the rest of the deployment, essentially in the deadliest place in Afghanistan at the time. Like I said, last time we had the top 10 HVIs. I had a golden goose egg dropped on my lap. I ended up receiving a source from one of the British guys who was the number 3 HVI in all of Sangin. And he'd been running this I had a source that had direct connection to the top 3 HVI. His code name was Gulab. And I was running this source essentially to get to him. Number 3 HVI. He was 27 years old. He was a strong up and comer. He had essentially the vote of the populace, if that makes sense, right? People loved him. The Afghan people loved him because he was a strong warrior at 27 years old. He was in charge of a full company of men, and he was running pretty much the district that I was in. So it was me against him essentially in this area. Me 26, 27 years old, him 27 years old. We're both in very prestigious roles, and we're both chasing after one another in a way. So I pretty much wrapped up my tour chasing this guy down. Probably about 2 months before I was about to leave, my source contacted me and said, hey, I'm with him and I can give you direct PID, which is a positive identification. So we use some of our tools and our assets to lock onto my source and get a PID. He legitimately gave me all the signals I taught him through Tradecraft to ID him and show us on live feed, essentially, hey, here's this guy. So we started following him live feed, and I called in the battalion commander at the time into the COC, and I said, sir, we have these reports, and this is on live screen, and this has been validated through multiple source reporting and so on and so forth. So he was given the option to go ahead. And what I mean by go ahead is to go ahead and take him out. From there, they committed to try to take him out, and it was 3 failed attempts. And I'm not going to go too deep into it because I don't know what I can exactly say. But due to the stalling and the hoopla, like the bureaucracy of everything that was going on, I'm not going to go too much in the red tape of it. But essentially, that lieutenant colonel had kind of whiffed on this whole thing because he was sitting there stalled and making decisions, and we kind of lost our window, and then we tried to scramble to make it back because he was going through kind of the red tape of bureaucracy, if that makes sense. He had to call him the JAG. We had to sit there and we couldn't drop a bomb at certain locations and blah, 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 blah. So we missed. And I was livid. Okay. And essentially that started to set the tone. The reason why I tell this is because it starts to set the tone for my departure from the military. Now, fast forwarding a couple months, and I'm getting ready to leave, and I find out word that my lieutenant has yet to write up the report for my award. And it leads to a confrontation between him, my chief on my team, and I. And essentially my chief stands up and says, "Sir, what are you doing? Why haven't you written this award up?" And he's, you can tell he's like backstepping, and he's saying, "Oh, I was just waiting for the deployment to end so I could get all the total stats, and I'll just end up writing them up for one award for the entire deployment." And we kind of got the sense that like,
Sounds
oh,
like
this
bullshit.
dude, yeah, this dude's stalling. He doesn't want to write this award up for me. And at the end of the day, it comes down to the fact that you need witness statements. Once you start writing a higher level award, you have to get witness statements. So anything above a Navy Achievement Medal, you have to get witness statements. And what he was doing was he was dragging his feet so that he didn't have to get the witness statements. And then in the end, he could just say, "Oh, oops, I didn't get witness statements. We're just going to put you in for a NAM." So we get back to the States, and the award's not written. My chief gets on his ass again and is like, "Sir, what the heck are you doing? Like, that's messed up," kind of deal. They end up writing me up for the lowest award you possibly can receive. And then they try to get me in trouble. Now, this is partially due to my fault. I did end up going home on leave. About 3 weeks after I got back from Afghanistan, I went home to Connecticut. Got welcomed at a local bar, and people were just buying me shots and drinks all night long. Probably the worst thing that could have happened, to be honest with you, because I'm back home in this place that has that very negative energy, and then I'm drinking alcohol, which has that very negative energy. So the dark side started to come out. My friend ended up getting into an altercation. Cops got called. It was very stupid. It was like, so he reached over a fence and he grabbed the hot dog bun off of like a hot dog vendor. He grabbed the hot dog bun and started eating it. And then the hot dog vendor got pissed off, essentially. And, drunken shenanigans like people do. And now looking back, how childish it is. So the cops got called on that. Here I am. I'm trying to talk to the cops. I'm like, "Hey, guys, like, don't arrest him. I got to go back home with this dude. I'm home on leave. I just came back from Afghanistan, blah, blah, blah." And then the cop tries to punk me. He's like, "Oh, like, kind of fuck you kind of deal. Like, get the fuck out of here." And I'm all like, "Hey, dude, like, same team, bro." Like, thinking that cops and military are kind of like in this brotherhood, and come to find out we're not. So now I'm dealing with this guy. Push comes to shove, I end up getting arrested for breach of peace because he and I started arguing on the street, and they wanted to obviously take me in and get their thrills off of that. So I get a breach of peace charge while I'm on leave. They notify, that exact cop notifies the reserve detachment, that notifies my command, and then they're all like, "Well, you were doing things that were unbecoming of the United States Marine Corps." So
For disturbing the peace?
Yeah, which ended up getting dropped in court anyway. So they're like, "Hey, just do 40 hours of community service, report back to us. Everything's going to get dropped." But that's how the military operates, is like that kind of pettiness. There's a lot of pettiness in the military today. There's a lot of people that are in the military not to be warriors and not to be part of a brotherhood. They're instead there for their own careers and to progress things, so that, especially our officer corps. The officer corps is very much conditioned, from college into OCS and then throughout, that they're the true leaders of the military, and that they're managers essentially that can go and move over into the corporate world. They're like the perfect.
Sounds like a corporate structure.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. This is essentially what did happen during the Obama era, but it was definitely occurring before that. But it became more prominent during the Obama era, where all of these generals that were actual military leaders got booted out, and they promoted the ones that were going to be loyal to the corporate machine, so to speak.
Yeah.
So this is 2010 now, mind you, and all this other stuff, and we have a new fleet of officers coming in with this new idea and these new ideals, and that's essentially what was going on. Now, come to find out, essentially what was being said behind my back was, we can't give this guy a Bronze Star or a Silver Star, number one, because that's an officer award and not a lowly enlisted man's award.
Ooh.
If we give him a Bronze Star, he's taking a Bronze Star allocation away from a major or a captain that could be able to get promoted off of this award. And then the last thing that was stated behind my back was, "Oh, if we give him this award too, we're never going to be able to control him," because apparently I now had the designator of like a cowboy or a rebel or something like that in my own unit, which was stupid, right? Because essentially, I have the spade tattooed on my hand, and I got this tattooed on me about 6 months before I got out, kind of as like a fuck you to the military. Same with the Che Guevara tattoo, but there's another reason behind the Che Guevara tattoo. But the spade to me always represented a maverick. I don't know if you ever seen that movie growing up. You ever see that movie?
Hell yeah, I've seen that. These are
one of my favorite movies ever, right? Ace of Spades, like that thing.
Yeah.
Always, I used to watch that movie as a kid, and that symbol has just stuck with me, and I've kind of always followed it. And what it means to me is that maverick mentality, right? Of like that Renaissance man, of that person who, it's not that I follow my own moral compass, but in a way I do. So I'll fit within the lines, but I'll also dabble outside the lines as well when I need to. Absolutely. And that's essentially what a counterintelligence operative is supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be operating in the shades of gray. That's why we're called the gray men, right? Like, that's why I moved over to this MOS, because that's my personality and that's where my IQ and all that other stuff is at, is that I don't fit within the nice tidy lines of these left and right lateral limits. I operate in shades of gray as well. So now I know that I'm getting fucked by my brothers. Essentially, I'm getting fucked by my leadership, and they're trying to burn me. So that put a real stink on everything as far as what my ideals were of belonging to this group. And in that time too, it kind of sat with me where I was like, I'm not going back to war. I'm not going to go back to war for these people, because I realize right now that no matter what I do, I'm going to be targeted. I'm not going to be taken care of. And why would I risk myself for that? So that's where that mindset started to kind of creep in of like, okay, I need to start getting away, right? I need to do that. So I ended up actually getting NJP'd. So that's called non-judicial punishment. I got NJP'd for that breach of peace charge, which was absolutely stupid. I took the lickings. I didn't fight it, because at that point in time, I was just like, if you guys are really going to do this, I was brought up on the ideals of the Marine Corps, of the John Basilones and the Dan Dailies and so on and so forth. Yeah. Men were awarded right away for their actions in combat, and then were heralded as heroes to their units and so forth. And that's what those citations were for. It was an embodiment of, hey, you guys need to live up to this, and you will be celebrated for that behavior. Instead, now I'm getting backstabbed, and I'm getting politically taken out in the backside by these men that are jealous because they don't have the gall to put themselves on the front lines. They'd rather rule by the pen than rule by the sword, which is complete fucking pencil neck shit.
Let me stop you right there to point something out.
Please do.
You're leading up all through life. It is one common thing that is stacked up negatively, and I don't want to focus on that, but I do want to make a point to highlight for the next chapter, where people can have a better understanding of the collective thought, and to where you end up is all through life. It's these effort, get the fuck, resentment. Yep. These little resentments that just keep building up. Like, no matter where you go, no matter how hard you try, no matter what you accomplish, and not only you're not getting recognized, you're getting punished.
Right. You're being punished for being competent.
Yes.
And then you're being punished for being excellent too.
Yeah. And it's worth mentioning that the changing of the culture of the military is going on simultaneously, because obviously look the way that turned out. But like, you're right in the beginning of that changing of the guard, like them old chesty puller, Basilone types, they're gone. They're never going to be seen again.
The old core is gone, and it's a new core. And there's a whole something else that put things into perspective for me, and too, as well, as right when I get back, we go through what's called this back in the saddle training. And essentially what was said to us, I'll even give you a little bit of a taste of like kind of how the things changed. You could see the dynamic changing.
This is like reintegration.
I come back from Afghanistan, the deadliest place in Afghanistan, total war. And I come back and I'm greeted by a female first sergeant.
Nice. And
the first thing she says to us, my team, is, hey guys, welcome back. You're no longer going to be cowboys. We're going to give you 96 hours to decompress, and we want you back here in camis on Monday with a clean haircut, fresh camis, and get ready to act like real Marines again. And I was just flabbergasted. I was like, wait, get ready to act like real Marines again?
Yeah, what the fuck am I just doing?
So the garrison Marine and the administrative Marine and the staff people in the command that answer emails all day and fight by email, those are the real Marines now. And what we were doing was the cowboy stuff.
Oh boy.
So that set the tone. And then so I show up 96 hours later and we start this thing called Back in the Saddle training. Essentially, it's death by PowerPoint for 5 days straight.
God,
where
mind-numbing.
we just sit in this room and we just listen to people fucking talk to us on these PowerPoints. And it's like reiterating the new, it's telling you of the new Marine Corps, essentially, right? It's these check in the box, PowerPoint, corporate fucking stuff. And it's things like equal opportunity. I don't know if you know what equal opportunity is, but it's essentially racism it's HR shit. It's all HR shit, right? No. It's all identity politics. Hey, equal opportunity. We're going to give you fair treatment regardless of your religion, gender, sex, race, blah, 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 blah. SARC, sexual assault response coordination of, hey, if you hear or see anything that happens to a female, like you must report this immediately to these people. They started talking about LGBTQ shit, right? Especially transgenders and how we're going to start unrolling these things for these new transgender stuff. And that was kind of like where the straw broke the camel's back. And I stood up. I'm a staff select at this point in time with getting ready to get awarded this high award. So we think. And I stand up to the Sergeant Major there. And I look at Sergeant Major and I go, Sergeant Major, I have a question. What does this have to do with fighting wars? Why are we discussing this stuff, right? We're actively fighting wars. This isn't important, right? And people were not happy with me asking that question. So that's essentially where the culture started to go down. Now,
that started way back when. This is my first time hearing of this happening.
Yeah, this is 2010, 2011, right? Yeah. And I got out in 2013. So you can only imagine how things were spiraling out of control from there. So I'm starting to realize the core that I belonged to, the core that I bought into, the core that I was, in love with, so to speak, and willing to give my life for was quickly, rapidly becoming something that I did not align with. And, it takes a while to start seeing those things. Now, let's start to go forward a little bit. And here I am, and I'm, I just got in trouble, but I really wanted to start going down more of the special operations side because I really grew a taste for it while I was over there, right? Working with SAS, MI5, working with ODAs, working with the MSOTs or the MARSOC teams. I really loved being a direct action guy and getting the intel and doing that stuff. So my end goal of what I was trying to do was I was trying to go higher and higher. I put in a MARSOC package. I was going to go over to MARSOC as an O211 and get attached to an MSOT, which is a special operations team. And then from there, what I wanted to do is I wanted to bounce over to TFO, which is Task Force Orange. It's a higher level outside the military, but, it's like in the Delta field, but for intel operatives like myself. And that's where I was at. I was 27 years old. I never wanted a family. I didn't want to get married. I didn't want to do any of that stuff. Come to find out, everything that had been going on kind of shot a hole in my plan because I now got in trouble. So that was going to put a delay by at least a year for me to put those packages in and all that stuff. But I still tried. But I got the kind of no, like, hey, you got to wait a year before that comes off, not off your record, but before we can kind of analyze and see if we can bring you over. So at that point in time, I was kind of sitting pretty at the company. I was just doing different types of training. I think they stuck me. No, that was later on. I ended up getting put on a new team. Even though I had a bad reputation, I got put on a new team, and they essentially knew that if they kept me idle, idle hands is the devil workshop, and people were on my side. Like there was a lot of people that were like, hey, you really screwed this dude over. There's a lot, it was about half the company that was like, you fucked this guy over bad. So they decided to do me a solid, so to speak. And I got put on a new team that was going to go out on a MU, the 15th MU, Marine Expeditionary Unit. My new OIC essentially said, hey, I'm going to wipe the slate clean because I heard both sides of the story and I'm my own man. I'm going to make my own decision. I want you on my team. I know you're a good operative. What we're going to do is we're going to set you up and we're going to put you on a force reconnaissance team. Essentially, MEF wants to regain their special operations capability. And there's a new model that's coming out, and we don't know a better person because you're such a stud than to integrate you directly into a force reconnaissance team that's pretty much going to model like a special operations team. So we're going to add an EOD guy to it. We're going to add a SIGINT guy, and we're going to add a counter intel guy. And you guys are going to get directly attached as like a no shit on the team guy. You have an option right now. What we can do is we can either send you to BRC, which is basic reconnaissance course, and you can get the designator of 0321 as a recon Marine. And then after you do that, you can get attached to the Force Reconnaissance Company, but you're probably going to be about a year behind them. Or we can directly attach you to the Force Reconnaissance team right now, and you can go in and start training with them next week, right at the beginning of their training. So I had a choice to make, whether or not I wanted to have the 0321 designation and be a no-kidding recon Marine, but it's a basic reconnaissance Marine, or if I wanted to go and play with the big boys right away and see if I could hold my salt and then build rapport and train with those guys directly and do all the cool shit. So I actually made the choice to do the latter. I decided to go and attach directly to them, build rapport, and work with them because I felt that that was going to be the better route for me to actually gain the trust of these guys, not being a recon Marine, but knowing that I could keep up with them. So I started training directly with them the next week. We started off essentially in the pool, doing all sorts of pool stuff to see if I could keep up with them. And I passed with flying colors. Right after that, we went into an amphib course, which was essentially open water finning for a couple miles and all that other stuff for a couple days straight. To my surprise, I actually held up plus some with those guys. And quickly they started to be like, whoa, this guy's fucking no shit, like legit. Went and did a couple shooting packages with them, and I held my own. I was actually on the leaderboard in first place on the first day, and I kind of fell off the next couple days to about fifth or sixth, but out of a whole company. I felt it was pretty good. Did a couple of actual force reconnaissance missions with them. Got HAHO certified, so high altitude, high opening jumps. I probably jumped like 26 times from 4 different airframes. So I went and did all that stuff for about a year and a half, and then it was getting ready to go out on the MEU, and I got approached by my chief, who was like, "Hey, man, you got about 8 months left on contract. We know this is a 6-month deployment, but we want to have a little bit more of a window here. Will you sign an extension or sign a new contract?" And I looked at him and I said, "Gunny, I'm not putting my fucking name on another goddamn piece of paper for you guys." And I hate to say it that way. And he's like, "Listen, there's a reason I'm coming at you the way I'm coming at you, because I know you got some bad taste in your mouth. With that said, though, if you don't extend, we got to take you off the team." And I said, I'm not signing another piece of paper. I cannot do it. So I pretty much in that moment signed away and said, "Hey, I'm getting out of the military." And they moved me back to the company, counterintelligence company, and I became the coordinator for our OJT program, on the job training. And I pretty much started coaching new guys that were getting ready to come into the field. Right. So what happens when you lat move over to counter intel? Our school is so hard that we put you through a bit of a process, beforehand, where we get you ready for the schoolhouse. And that's essentially what I did. And during this time frame, I was also doing CrossFit. I got big into CrossFit. I got big into MMA right when I got back. And then my buddy, who was a counter intel guy, opened up his own CrossFit gym, and I went and started working out and doing some CrossFit. And I became really good at CrossFit right away. And I was like, man, I missed the barbell. Getting punched in the face all the time is fun. I love it, but kind of like this more, and I'm really good at it. So it's another thing that I could pivot to after I get out of the military. So I started really climbing the leaderboard as far as like competition wise in CrossFit. And I started coaching in CrossFit, training. Voice that. So I started to go with this. Now, back in OJT, this is started out CrossFit. A lot of stress. And I didn't realize that obviously I had a TBI as well. I had a traumatic brain injury, and this is where things started to happen. So about 6 months before I got out, I actually started seeing a counselor, not a therapist, thinking that this is what's going to help. And the counselor started to help because the counselor really started to shine a lot of light on my childhood stuff.
Damn, we lost him. Y'all sit tight. This is where it's going to start getting better and better. Well, here he is.
What's that? You got me?
Yeah, he dropped out. I was trying to give you a heads up in a private chat.
Where'd you hear last?
You got into therapy, and she started touching on some things about your childhood, bringing that to light.
We didn't have a lot of time, though. We had about 6 months, and it wasn't too much time to work with in order to really do the work. So I ended up going down to Wounded Warrior Battalion and talking to a therapist there. And my depression started to kind of spiral out of control to the point that there'd be 3 days in a row where I'd have to lay in bed and I wouldn't get up until 2:00, and I'd call into work and I'd be like, guys, I don't know what's going on. This is rough. And then I'd motivate myself to get up and go work out. And then I just kind of started to have these issues, right? And I went down to Wounded Warrior Battalion and they ran me through some tests and they said, you have PTSD, but we don't want to classify it as PTSD right now because it might be too soon. And you're showing some things cognitively that might be in the realm of TBI, but we don't want to do that too soon. But what we're thinking we can do is we can essentially put you on some SSRIs, like a very low dose.
Oh.
And then we could do to take care of the acute depression and all that other stuff that I was dealing with. And then what we could do is put you through some rigorous therapy. And then hopefully in 6 to 9 months, we could wean you off of that while you just maintain the therapy. Now, I only have 6 months left in the military, or less, 4 months left. And this is where it all fucking fell to shit. Was I got out of the military and I got transferred over to the VA. And the VA, everyone's heard the horror stories.
Yeah. I have
the VA, hey, fuck what those guys said at Wounded Warrior Battalion. We're just going to try to throw a shit ton of meds at you. We're only going to talk to you for 10 minutes and then get out the door. Yeah. Whenever you come back, essentially just check in, let us know what type of side effects you're having. We'll throw another prescription at you. So they threw, I think, 5 medication at me right off the bat, and I literally only just stuck with the low-dose SSRI. But essentially, moving forward, I'm sorry?
Good thing.
Right, yeah. I was like, I don't want to be a drugged-out fiend, right? But I had already committed to the SSRIs. But, of course, over time, that low dose still crept up, and I started to feel like a zombie. Now, mind you, what am I doing now as well? Okay, well, I saved up about $250K while I was in the military from my bonus that I invested in 2008 to this time, and I cashed out most of it in order for me to open up my CrossFit gym. So now I own my own CrossFit gym. I'm still having issues with depression, but I've got it somewhat managed with the SSRIs. I'm running this business, and it's a small business in California, and the stress is just mounting up after a year or two or so and just running myself ragged and all that other shit. Long story short, after all that, with all the stress, I kind of reached a point where I was like, I'm done with these SSRIs. I'm done with the VA. I'm going to go my own route. I'm going to look up natural holistic therapies. Got into cannabis use and started eating a little bit of cannabis every day to kind of recover, help out with the body pains and all that stuff. And I started having these kind of spiritual moments in my life.
Started touching on that, huh?
Yeah. So the cannabis started to wake things up subconsciously. That started to well things up. And soon enough, I began smoking cannabis, and then I came up with the great idea to start growing my own cannabis at the same time to start to fund the CrossFit gym a little bit more and to start another side business as cannabis became legal in California. And I was using a lot of cannabis at the time while I was growing. I was barely floating my CrossFit gym and all this other stuff. And next thing kind of happened with this is, and I didn't realize this, but a cornucopia of events happened. I was losing my gym. I was highly in debt. I was growing this cannabis and I was struggling with that. I had my own place at the time that I was growing the cannabis out of. I had this whole team of people before that loved me, but now just not despise me, but they're like, this guy's going through some shit. We want nothing to do with him. And like I said, this perfect cornucopia of events happened with the withdrawal from the SSRIs that most people don't talk about.
Oh, it's miserable.
And the use of cannabis too. It exacerbated this spiritual awakening. And, I started tapping into this other realm that I didn't know about. But however, it's crazy because I don't know if you remember part of the story that I told you about in the last one, but I had heard a voice.
Yeah.
I had heard a voice and it said, don't step there. It pierced the veil. It punctured this thing and it was real. as crazy as that sounds. And during this time that I'm going through right now with the withdrawal, I'm in a completely different frequency through eating cannabis, which is a hallucinatory substance now, by the way. I don't know if you're aware of that. But when you eat cannabis and you smoke cannabis, it's digested differently.
Mm-hmm.
When you eat cannabis, it's a hallucinatory substance now. It's no kidding. So even though THC is psychoactive in the brain when you smoke it, it's much more when you do this. So now I'm starting to see things. I'm starting to hear things. And this is like a crazy situation to talk about because most people will now probably assume, oh, this guy's psychotic, right? But it was almost like, some people would consider it like a schizophrenic episode. But in the research that I was doing and the things that I was receiving, this has been also known as a psycho-spiritual breakthrough or a Kundalini awakening. This has been documented in other realms, and I didn't know these things. I didn't know because we never talked about these things through my childhood or in any type of education, but there's all sorts of esoteric knowledge that is out there and real.
That stuff's just becoming more well known.
Right. So I'm still having my bats and spouts with depression and manic episodes and all this other stuff, mainly because of SSRIs and because of the TBI and all that other stuff. But essentially, this launched me down the road of holistic healing, how to heal holistically using things from the earth. And I came up with a philosophy during this time that whatever happens here, right, there's two laws that I kind of understand, right? Every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, right? That's a Newtonian law, right? I was blown up and I had this TBI. That energy had to travel somewhere, right? There had to be something, which means if that energy happened to me, then there needs to be another energy out there that's going to be able to balance it out. And what does it look like? Then the next thing that I learned is everything on this earth, for every venom, there's an anti-venom.
Yeah.
For every ailment that you have, there's already something produced on this earth that is there in a natural state that can heal it. So I bring this one guy in to help me build my grow room. And I'm talking about all this stuff, right? I'm like, I want to build a retreat center for veterans and all this other stuff and help them overcome PTSD and depression, blah, 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 cannabis use, holistic, blah, 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 blah. He's like, bro, you sound like Joe Rogan. Mind you, this is 2014. Joe Rogan's not huge, but he's up and coming. And, the big conversation is like, he's like, hey, I want you to listen to this podcast. It sounds like something that you'd be interested in. I think it was him and Aubrey Marcus, and Aubrey Marcus is talking about his ayahuasca and iboga ceremonies.
Mm-hmm.
And instantaneously after I hear this, I'm like, wow, that's what I got to do. However, I'm pretty much in debt at this moment in time. I'm like, I can't afford to go do this. I got to make sure this grow happens. I got a CrossFit gym that I got to run. I can't afford to spend however much money I need to get down to Peru in order to go do this, right? Well, the universe didn't have that in store for me because a couple weeks later, this is going to sound kind of weird, but I'll say there was a spiritual thing that occurred that informed me to go down to Peru. It said, just hop on a plane, buy a ticket, hop on a plane, go on this journey. Everything's going to be okay. And I responded back to that voice and I said, I don't have the money for it. And they said, oh yeah, go look at a flight. Look at the price right now. Went, looked at the price, $800 for this flight down to Iquitos, Peru. Then it said, go look in your bank account. I went and looked at my bank account and I had $816 that I didn't know I had. And in that moment, I booked that flight. With no plan, nowhere to go, none of this stuff. And I had just watched this documentary, I think it's called Into the Fire or something like that. It was about a former Marine who had opened up his own ayahuasca retreat down in Iquitos, Peru, who had gone through PTSD episodes and all this other stuff. And I said, you know what I'm going to do? Even though I don't have a plan, I'm going to go down there. I'm going to fly down there. I'm going to fly down. I'm going to go to this guy's place. I'm going to knock on his door and I'm going to tell him my story. And I'm going to say, I need your help. Whatever I can do, whenever I get better to help you out or whatever I will do. So I hop on the plane. I go down there. I get to Iquitos, Peru. I talk to the cab driver right there and the Spanish that I could speak. And I said, take me to this place. And he turns around and he looks at me and he says, that place is closed down. And I said, what? He said, that place is closed down. They killed someone through bad stuff a couple months ago. That place is closed down. I said, shit. So I go back into the airport and I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do now, right? Like my plan is over. And I run into another American there and he's like, hey man, where are you from? And I'm like, all mad and stuff. And I'm like, well, I'm from San Diego. He's like, oh, I'm from LA. He's like, hey, my name is Marshall. And I'm like, oh, cool. Nice to meet you. He's like, hey, what's your plan? I mean, I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, it looks like you're in a little bit of trouble right now. And I said, yeah, that's what's going on. I said, I don't have any money and I came here to do this. And this is my story and blah, 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 blah. And he's like, well, I'm here to do the same thing, but I don't know if my shaman will take you in because there's like this really long process that you have to go through in order for her to take you in and all this other stuff. And like, it's really like she really does the work, if that makes sense. It's not just some scam to get money. It's like, she really selects people. He said, but I'll tell you what, why don't you come with me and we'll see what we can do. But how about you take this $100 bill and it should be able to afford you a hotel for the week until your or for the next 10 days until your flight goes back home. And I said, wow, thank you. I got his license and all that stuff. And I said, hey, I'll pay you back. He's like, okay, cool. So we go to his hotel and we're all hanging out, the 4 people that are going to do the ayahuasca ceremony. And we're all like hanging out, telling our story. And like, we're all on the same page. It's like fate, right? And then finally the 2 shamans show up. And the female shaman looks at me and she's like, who are you? And I look at her and I pull out my bottle of meds and I said, you know, this is my name. I have PTSD and I got blown up in Afghanistan and I never want to take these again. And I want to try to find a way so that other veterans can heal. And she snatches the bottle of meds out of my hand and she runs in the room with the other shaman. And all of a sudden, like, I hear rattles, or actually what she says is, I need to consult the spirits. And she runs in that room, closes the door, and all of a sudden, like, smoke starts coming out, and I'm hearing like rattles and shaking, and she emerges from the room like 45 minutes later. And she says to me, the spirits have spoken. You are to come with us deep into the Amazon rainforest and go through a series of cleanses with us. However, you're not going to do ayahuasca with us. Will you come? And I sat there in that moment kind of defeated because my mission was to go down there, right? You got to remember, I'm very mission oriented, especially as, you know, the alpha mindset style plus Marine and all that other stuff. And I said, I was led down here. I'm going to trust it. So I went with them. So the next 4 days we spent brewing ayahuasca, and they let me help out with brewing ayahuasca and helping as best as I can around the camp. And we went through a series of cleanses, like different things in the river and all sorts of stuff. And I'm in the middle of like nowhere and deep into the rainforest, like 2.5 hours away from civilization. Scary as all hell, but awesome at the same time.
Totally different experience.
Triple canopy rainforest. Like puma are coming in and out of our, what's it called? There's alligators or crocodiles in the rivers right there. It's like wild, right? On the 4th day, the other shaman who actually owns the land, he's like, his family's been in that one spot in Peru for 10,000 years. That's how far back he can trace his lineage. God. He comes up to me and he says, the spirit spoke to me last night and you're to drink ayahuasca with us tonight in our ceremony. So I got to drink ayahuasca with them. And then I had to depart. I did 2 ceremonies with them, saw some crazy, wild, amazing stuff. Came back to the States, lost my business. So lost my gym, lost the grow, was $60,000 in debt, lost my house, had to pack everything up, lost all my friends after doing ayahuasca, and going through everything I had to. And I was essentially homeless for about 2.5 months. I lived in a solar powered bus in the middle of the Cleveland National Forest in Lake Elsinore, scraping by, about 45 minutes away from all civilization on the top of a mountain. It was wild. Kind of went in a little Henry David Thoreau for a little bit, right? Like Walden Lake, completely like anti-materialistic, all this other stuff. And then I said, you know what? Sitting on the top of this mountain looking down at civilization, I said, I got to go back into civilization. I have to get better. But I got a story that occurred during that time to kind of help me snap to figure this out. And I was sleeping in this bus one night, and I woke up at about 3:00 in the morning, and I was just like, fuck my life, fuck everything. I've failed. I'm a total loser. I'm going through these episodes, and I don't know what the fuck's going on. Ayahuasca didn't heal the depression and the anxiety. My life is worse off. I'm a total fucking failure. I'm like, I should just fucking kill myself. You know what I mean? Like kind of going through that. And, you know, I had my 1911 sitting on a little desk inside the bus in case of fucking bobcats or whatever. And I'm looking at the gun, and I lay down, and I'm just kind of sitting there in my own misery. And I had this hallucination type thing happen to me where I'm laying there, and all of a sudden it was almost like a sleep paralysis where my body completely locked up and I couldn't move, but I was still awake. And I felt darkness. I felt cold darkness coming up from my toes and moving up my body rapidly. I could feel darkness, if that makes any sense. It was nothing. It was cold nothingness. And I was like, oh shit, here's death. Like, death is here to talk to me. Like, death is coming for me right now. This is it. Like, I'm going on this journey. And right before it crossed my eyes, I now started hallucinating. And I saw this story. I saw this video of my life, of me looking on, of my entire life and up to that point, of how it was like watching a movie, like I said, of how I was living my entire life based on how people valued me and what they said my value was. And this came from my childhood and kind of continued throughout, even in the military and with the CrossFit gym and everything else that I was doing. And I saw an image of me dying, me being dead, me in a coffin, looking up at my family who was standing over my grave. And they were all crying, but it was crocodile tears. But behind those tears, they were laughing. And they were using my death as a means for people to feel sorry for them. And they were happy that they were finally rid of me. And they were using the death, like I said, as a means for them to like gain and garner sympathy of like, oh, poor me, my son killed himself. Poor me, poor me, poor me. And it wasn't about me.
Did you ever find out, did you ever look deeper into this, where this came from?
I think it's just the story. I think it's the story of my family and what I was brought up in. And I think it's a story of like what, that's how it was. It's almost like if you're ever in a codependent relationship and you're not the toxic one, but you're the enabler. You enable people to kind of leech off you vampirically.
Yeah.
That's kind of essentially what it was, but I bought into the story, and that's how it was with all my relationships and everything else. Every relationship that I had that same story of that kind of codependency, right? Of like me being number 2 or lower. And I accepted that role. I never accepted position number 1. I'm like, no, I'm number 1. I deserve that role and those accoutrements that come along with being number 1, right?
Oh, yeah.
So now here I am, and I'm at the bottom of a pit, right? It's like a deep, dark well, this stony, craggy well. And I'm falling, and I hit rock bottom, and I'm broken. Like, I feel broken. And I look up, and I can only see a sliver of light. And the voice says to me, essentially, now that you've seen how you've lived life up to this point, you now have a choice to make. You can either die here, or you can crawl yourself out of this hole. And once you crawl yourself out of this hole, you're going to live your life like the hero you deserve to be. You have a choice. Which is it? Are you going to die here with that story and allow them to use that? Or are you going to rise to the occasion and become a hero? And clearly I made the choice to live. So that was 2014, end of 2014. 2015. It's almost 10 years ago that happened, that I made that choice. And from there, I had to battle forward of overcoming the PTSD and TBI by using holistic methods and different types of things, chiropractic, acupuncture, good, solid diet, EMDR therapy, so on and so forth. There's a whole bunch of different things that I had to do, but I was able to heal everything that I did through that, plus journey to the other side, go to the depths, which then finally led me to like coming back and then doing Iboga, and that Iboga kind of put me on the path of like the quote unquote red pill.
Let me stop you there.
Go for it.
I want to open up for a couple minutes. Can we just do a part 3? We talked about this.
Yeah,
I want you to go into Ibogaine and like before you go into your own experience and the aftermath and all the things that have happened. I want you to kind of give a good synopsis of what it is and what it's intended for. So sure. I'd rather you have the room to be able to do that. You go with that?
Okay. Yeah.
Because we have I told DT no questions tonight, but we're going to need another hour at least to go over this. And he had some questions, and I'm sure there's other questions that the audience wants to ask in the chat. So I figured we'd give it the last 10 minutes for that. You good with that?
Sounds good.
All right, first question. If a young man in the U.S. wants to enlist, what advice would Lysander give to them?
That's always a tough question. Me running Deep End Fitness Scottsdale right now, I have a lot of guys that are going through pipelines or getting ready to train to go through pipelines, so special operation stuff. The question always comes up. What advice would I give? I would say this. This sounds kind of crazy, but I never want men to avoid the call to become a warrior. It's one of my truest beliefs. I've written about this in numerous books. Young men need to become warriors first. You have to go through that initiation of the warrior, and it has to start at 18. It has to start at 18. You have to answer that call. You have to go. What I see in the future versus what's happening now, this paradigm still exists, and this country still exists, and this government still exists. And honestly, it's kind of the way I look at everything now when it comes to our government. I would say extract as much as you can without investing as much as you can. So if you do go in, number one, don't take the jab. Don't take the jab. Don't take the jab, right? But get out of it as much as you possibly can. Learn those skills, because our military still has the best training programs and so on, and the best stuff to do. But I would look at it as training for you to become the best version of yourself, rather than you buying into the ideology of you being a cog in the machine, if that makes any sense. I wouldn't look at joining the military today as trying to stay in for the rest of your life. I would say do a small investment, get out of it what you can, extract, and then get out, and then build your own life outside of the military, knowing that this was just a phase that gave you a lot of skills, a lot of soft skills and a lot of hard skills to make you a more successful man, right? For instance, the things I learned in boot camp, the attention to detail, the following of commands, the situational awareness, even if you're not going to go down the special operations pipeline, take that and apply it to your life. One of the biggest issues that I have with most veterans today is they get out of the military thinking that the country owes them something. It's like, no, you went through a process that set you up for success by teaching you the disciplines for you to become a successful man. And what pisses me off is when I see a veteran that is fat and out of shape, doesn't clean their shit, doesn't clean their house, doesn't clean their home, doesn't make their bed. That wasn't just a skill for you in the military that you get to just shirk and run away from. That's a skill you're supposed to take for life. And the fact that most people sit there and look at those skills and look at it as some form of slave labor or dentured servitude or anything like that, I think that's the prison that they're in. So I would say to people today, join, but also keep your eye on what's going on, because if I'm being honest with you, I think there's going to be a fragmentation that occurs here in the future, and people are going to have to make some choices, because I think there are going to be some orders that come down later on where the military is going to be told to do stuff against the civilian populace, and you have to already know what your moral compass is and what decision you're going to make before joining.
Well put.
Thanks.
DT, what'd you think about that? Answer your question. I would, obviously, I've never been in the military. Tried, couldn't get in. And but in the field I'm in, there's a lot of veterans. I say a lot. There's a lot of the most successful guys I meet, from electrician to HVAC to contractors. The most successful guys all have a military background, and they take with them. And I see the biggest component, the biggest contributor to their success is the resilience and discipline they built in the military. It's a common thread. I know a guy who owns a moving company. By pure happenstance, that 3 of the most successful guys I know in this field are all 82nd Airborne guys. And one's a contractor, does about $1.5 million a year. Another's an electrician, startup. He's been in about 3 years. Dude's pulling in about $250,000. And another guy's owns a Veterans Moving, it's called.
Nice.
And he does really well for himself. But these guys work. They don't complain. They get shit done. They up, clean, fresh every day. They're shaving, hair groomed, clothes they look presentable.
In the detail, how you do the little things is how you do all things, right? How you do the little things, you do the big things. And most people think that they can just shirk the little things. It's as simple as making your bed and putting your shopping cart away. How you live, that's the big thing I say to everybody from here. Like for everything that I do, the way that I do the small things is the way that I do the big things, because that's my practice for the big things.
Right? How you do one thing is how you do everything.
Right.
So yeah, there are a lot of benefits to get out of other than just getting a pension and but
those pensions aren't going to exist in the future.
No.
Get the skills out of it. That's why men became warriors in the past. It was not just, yeah, you want to be blooded, right? Like you want to see what you become, but there's only a certain percentage of men that are going to do it. But if we had a military minded country where all men were in the military to start off with,
this wouldn't be happening right now.
The skills that are formed, the brotherhoods that are formed, the relationships that are formed, the mindset that are formed is what would lead to the country to being successful, a good society, a good civilization, right?
Yeah.
And it's because of the skills that are formed during that time frame. And it pains me when I see people that let go of all those skills and just say, that was the past. It's like, bro, you just gave up on yourself. That's what you gave up on.
Well, on behalf of some of those guys, and obviously I can't speak for everyone, there's a few guys I knew who were veterans, and it's probably not people you would associate with, but these guys are still on medication heavily. They just in and out the VA once a month.
Yep.
Getting
and
refills.
Yeah, exactly. They're
gone.
They're just drug addicts at this point. And they've allowed themselves to become drug addicts.
And but you can still see the shade of fucking honor in them is the sad part. Like they still have a hint of that. You could see it behind their empty eyes. And that's what's painful for me to see.
I agree.
But I stay out of that because who am I to judge anybody? I've never had the opportunity to serve this country, and that's not my wheelhouse. Next question. What is some advice for MEPS?
So MEPS is the in processing before you're getting ready to go in. In all honesty, I would say to get in shape and stay in shape, commit to whatever fitness regimen your detachment's doing for whatever branch of service you're going into. I'm going to ask the question. If you're still listening, you could leave the comment, but what branch are you going into? And I could give you a little bit better idea of what to do. But I'd say invest yourself while you're in MEPS too. Don't just think, oh, when I get ready to go for the military is when things are going to turn up. Get yourself in shape, run a bit, swim a bit if you're going Navy or Marines.
Army.
He's going Army.
Yeah.
And what MOS are you pursuing?
What MOS, Henry? I would say too, like study for that ASVAB. Try to score high.
Well, if he's in MEPS, he's already taken his ASVAB. So
I meant to say that for DT to add to that.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, game the game. I didn't have that when I was in or getting ready going. We didn't have any ASVAB training or anything like that. I still did well.
Infantry,
so 11 Bravo. Yeah, and if I were you, man, to be honest with you, I would already start looking to excel. So the thing about the Army, the great thing about the Army is it's made up of about 90% dum-dums, and then 10% are the studs. And the great part is the Army sets people up who want to be studs to become studs. So if you choose to be part of the 10% in the Army and you say, I want to go this career field, I want to go down this direction, I want to go to these schools, I want to become XYZ, the Army says yes and then lets you fail. Whereas in the Marines, what we do is we're crabs in a bucket. We say, hey, you're a Marine. You don't need to be special. No. And you have to fight tooth and nail to get outside of that crabs in the bucket type of thing. Whereas the Army is like, yeah, we're full of a bunch of turds. And if you want to be excellent, we got all the money and resources in the world if you want it. So for me, I would already start looking beyond just becoming an 11 Bravo. I would start looking into potentially going into the 18 field. So into special operations, become an SF guy. But if that's not your cup of tea, maybe going Ranger for sure. Like if I'm going infantry, I would definitely want to get into the Ranger career path as well. Get those accolades, man. Get those titles. Get SF, get Ranger. Do all those things, because one of the things that I didn't tell in my story was something that's kind of hurt me even though I don't agree with it, because I think that I was able to learn a lot of hard skills and soft skills. But my titles don't carry too far. So if I did go to BRC and get the 0321, becoming a recon Marine instead of doing just the force recon workup that I did with them to excel, I would be welcomed into a lot more things, especially in the civilian world, because I would say I would have a DD-214 that says recon Marine on it. So now, you have the title, right? You got to remember, we live in a very materialistic world today where having those titles and accoutrements attached to your name are everything.
Yeah.
And I'm not necessarily saying that's the right thing to do. I don't think going down that road is the right way, because I do think that I still have a lot of treasure sitting at the end of my rainbow that I've yet to arrive to because of the path that I've chosen. But what I am saying is, if you could do that and then go down the journey of doing those things, even better.
Agree. Great advice. I've had my son Hunter explored the military back when he was 17. We got on a call with a mutual friend of ours, you know really well. And he said the same thing. If you're going to go Army, SF.
Yeah.
That's the way to go.
I don't know where they're at right now. I know when I was in that they were letting 18-year-olds try out for SF and getting an 18 X-ray contract. I don't know if they've gone back to you have to wait after one enlistment before moving over to an ODA or pursuing the 18 career field. So,
well, now you know you can look into it. I don't know anything about the ins and outs. The only thing I hear is on I like watching the veterans podcast, Sean Ryan, Mike Glover, Mike Drop, like all those. And they have veterans on, guys who aren't active anymore. And I hear a lot about that 18 X-ray. I don't know anything about the stipulations of it nowadays.
I don't know if they do it anymore either. I don't really keep track on current stuff with that.
You're welcome, Henry. Thanks for tuning in again. One of my lifers there, brother. Good dude. So, yeah, I actually tried to get into the Marines back in 98.
Jeez.
Yeah. And I couldn't get in. Tried and tried and tried. They called me in 2003. I had a recruiter who worked with me for almost a year.
Jeez.
I ran into some legal trouble in my first few years of adulthood.
Yeah.
And pre 9/11, they were pretty particular.
Yeah, it was Garrison Marine Corps at that point in time. They wanted pretty boys.
Yep.
They wanted everyone to have a perfect record.
I did not fit in that.
Nope.
They tried. And then it wasn't like the old days where the judge would say, here's your sentence.
Yep.
Right. They said, no, they're not doing that. So, but they called me back in 2003 and I was already married. Shit. So, here we go. Oh, you're going to like this one right in your wheelhouse. What do you think about women integrating into infantry units of men?
I don't think women should be in the military, period. So that's my stance on it.
Well, I agree.
Women aren't supposed to be warriors. That's not what they're designed for. That's not their makeup. They shouldn't be in police. They shouldn't be in police, like any police, fire department. I don't believe that women should be in politics. I don't believe any of this stuff.
No.
So I think the fact that we have an integrated military right now was probably the Trojan horse that has led to where we're at today.
Absolutely. Look at the standards that were lowered. Like that's not.
It's the double standards. It's not. There's always the big thing that I noticed. I could see the biggest alpha stud military leader, and the second a woman was in the room, he would change his demeanor and change everything.
Yep.
And it would become, he could be sitting there saying all the FUs and all this other stuff, and then all of a sudden start changing his behavior, tone, and everything around women. And that was even happening if there was a lower ranked female in the room, because men have this, especially in the blue pill days too, men have this kind of chivalric mindset when it comes to women. And it's a very hard masculine urge to turn off that even the military doesn't have the ability to turn off. Right. Sex and fraternization. It's rampant within the military. It's just a thing you can't turn off. If you're going to sit here and you're going to train somebody to be the fucking highest T motherfucker in the world, to go and do shit and risk his life and limb, and then you put some girls in front of him and say, hey, don't have sex with them. Sorry. You can't you can't politicize, bureaucratize, or corporatize that type of stuff out of men. And we're learning that right now with the failed social experiments that we've played with over the last couple of decades.
Yeah, it's crumbling in front of us now. That's
Yeah.
We're definitely suffering the consequences of dabbling in that. Society, politically, corporate-wide, like economically, in every facet of our country is suffering the consequences.
And I mean, I hate to say this, I hate always having to go back and be like, oh, I'm not trying to sound sexist and all this stuff. I'm just stating facts. I think that men and women have their different roles, and I think we have different biological roles. I'm not saying anything different than what a 1940s Christian man would be saying here in America.
No, well, look, when I was growing up, my dad's a Vietnam veteran, and when he talked about Marines and the Marines I met that he knew, those were like break glass in case of war motherfuckers.
Yeah.
Like they were stone killers. They didn't make any excuses or apologies.
Yeah, we're retarded pit bulls. Like,
yeah.
Let us out of the cage to go fuck shit up, and then we come back home and you put us back in the cage. And that's
Go
our
look
base.
at World War II, the Pacific Theater. Let the Marines out and to do the work, and they did. That's what they're made for. That's what they're born and bred for.
Well, and this is kind of the overall crux of what I was saying too earlier is like the big downfall that I saw was I thought we were a war fighting function and I thought we were a band of brothers. And when I came back from Afghanistan, I quickly learned that both of those things were not the priorities any longer, and it broke my heart. And I hate to say it that romantically, but it really shattered my paradigm of the world that we lived in.
Well, I'm sure you finally got into something and found your place. Like as a warrior, what better place would you be in modern society?
Well, I can tell you this though, and my last book that I wrote that I haven't published, I really go through and I tear apart the military, specifically the officer corps, but I tear apart the military too. I've completely restructured it. I think moving forward, of running a society, I've really hammered in what needs to happen in the military to get it back. And I think more and more men are starting to see this because I see the younger generation, the Gen Xers, Gen Xers rather. A lot of these guys are feeling this call to duty. They're feeling this call to become a warrior. They're really feeling the mythology of the time and having this aching soul call for it. But just like what that question asks is like, hey, do you recommend it in this time? And I'm like, hey, I got to say, like, dip 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And that's a shitty thing to say because when you're a warrior, you have to be a warrior through and through. It has to run through your blood. It has to run through your veins. It has to tap into your soul deeply so that you can be transformed, right? Like I've been transformed.
Well,
and
what's encouraging.
That's the thing that I want to build. That's what I'm projecting. That's what I'm building in this world today is I say this to everybody that I meet. I say, I'm going to change the world. I'm going to change this society. I'm going to build the world that I see that is true, just, and fair so that we can have better civilizations in the future so that we can create better men and better women. And that's part of it is changing the military as well and giving men the ability for them to become warriors in a true warrior brotherhood and a true warrior caste, because I got to see all the bad. So now I know what to do to make it good.
Well, and you know what else is encouraging about this new generation sprouting up and seeking that inner warrior, that conquering that every man has boiling deep down inside. The encouraging thing about that is that hasn't been talked about in a long time. When is the last time do you think in public school that anything about a warrior archetype or king archetype or if anything like that has ever been mentioned to these young men? Yet they still have the calling. So
because it's a part of our fabric.
Because it's a part of our fabric. And I love that. I love that people are starting to listen.
Right.
They're starting to embrace that.
This goes beyond us. That's the big thing that people have to understand. When I start talking all esoterically and woo-woo-y about outside of this realm, people got to understand that we've been created, and there's an overarching theme. There's things that cannot be withdrawn from us, even though there's powers that are trying to withdraw it from us. And the more you try to take it away, the more it's going to build up, and that's what people are starting to feel. People want true connection. They want to live authentic lives. They want to be given the ability to go and adventure and learn the hard lessons. And we've just been living in a bubble wrap society that's been sterilized from Awesome. There's some people that bought into it, just like the Matrix, right? That's what the Matrix is. The Matrix says, hey, we'll feed you, we'll pay you, we'll give you an easy, cushy job in the air conditioning, and you'll be happy doing it. And people are rejecting.
Fucking miserable.
People are saying, we don't want this sterilized bullshit. We don't want this inauthentic bullshit. We don't want this fake crap. We want to risk it, and we want to risk it all if we have to.
Men seek we don't have rites of passage anymore. There used to be a time when you had to prove yourself as a man, where you had to enter manhood. And
my second book talks about that deeply. Yeah, Purging Feminism. I have a chapter in there that talks about a multi-generational masculine mentorship program that men have to go through. It's what we need to create, where there's rites of passage. The soul needs that. We think too physically. We think that we need to go through a physical transformation, but we also need to go through that's what we're here for. That's what this meat suit is, just a vessel for us to level up our soul.
Yeah. Very well put. Look, I got a question. Proud Masculine. Is this one of your guys?
Yep.
Ricardo?
Yep.
I'm still getting familiar with the work. What would you consider as your forte in helping men in the realm of masculinity? My forte, I don't know, mindset. I've lived, I don't know what to say, challenging, difficult life. And I've lived on both sides of, let me give you an example. I was raised by a woman. My dad was around till I was about 10. Through my life, my strongest masculine influences have been my step-grandfather, who was a infantry, a grunt in the Pacific War. That's how I know so much about the war in the Pacific. 2 years out fighting, killing. I didn't know this till I was about 16 or 17. He told me everything and kind of reshaped my whole idea of what a man should be. Because up until that point, I had bad advice and bad guidance from my mother. You know what I mean? And she was emotionally volatile, unstable, like certainly no place for a young man to be grown up in and shown what life is. So I stumbled through life just learning shit the hardest way. Like learned a lot about masculinity on construction sites, jail, and talk about drinking from a fire hose. I mean, you get locked up in jail, you in with a bunch of fucking, not only degenerates, but believe it or not, there's a lot of strong-willed, masculine alpha males in jail.
Right.
And so you either get with it or you're in trouble. And over the years, the little things I've learned, I've just had this knack for implementing all these little things that I'd pick up along the way into this collective, complete change of mindset. And through recovery, battling addiction and alcoholism, is accountability. So you take the accountability, take accountability for everything that happens in your life, good and bad, total responsibility. Don't try to duck or shun anything that happens, good or bad. Take it and own it. And the good things, that belongs to me now, because that's mine. And the bad things, that belongs to me too. But now what I have an opportunity is to learn and grow from it. So it's just been an accumulation, a lifetime, 48 years Thursday, of accumulating these life experiences and through building a community. Around here, physically, I talked to about 2 people, 3 people. Most of my most grounded, influential friends and like-minded friends are all on the internet. Mm-hmm. You, another guy you might not know, Paul. And there's a few other people that I communicate with regularly. I have a mentor in construction that he's also in recovery. And then my sponsor. So I have the spiritual basis covered. I have a business coach and therapy / life coach, that we do business projections, money moves and stuff like that. So building a tribe. And I know you've preached that over the years is tribe. So my biggest contribution is my life experience. I have a son who's in the audience now. He's 20. He'll be 21 this year. and this dude is killing it. And I give all the thanks and grace to God because I can't take credit for things that don't belong to me. The highest honor in this life is being a father to me. And thank God. And I'm not saying this because I'm like a cult leader or something, but I tell him, think of me like Jesus. I committed the sin, so you don't have to.
Yeah.
And I'm not blaspheming God by any means, but just to give you a point of reference. Well, I've made the mistakes, so you don't have to. I can tell you a clear path forward to avoid the landmines, the relationship landmines, the business landmines, the decision-making landmines, the friends landmines. Like I've gone through life making one mistake after another, but some of the things for a little while, I would repeat the mistakes, but eventually I learned. And through that comes wisdom and experience and knowledge. You know, the deepest experience and knowledge that you can ever gain. I mean, the deepest knowledge you can gain is through experience.
Right.
And when I've also grown and matured to the point where I have people in my life who are ahead of me, who tell me what I'm trying to tell these young men, that it's good to learn from your mistakes, but it's even better to learn from other people's mistakes. And that's just being open and humble. And then so when you got your head on right, you're going to select better people. When you got your spirit aligned with your path and the physical, mental, spiritual aligned, you're going to attract better people and better opportunities and better things. And you're going to be more attuned to the bullshit. And it's real important that, you know, especially nowadays, that we keep our eyes and ears wide open, because there's so much garbage coming down the pipe from every direction, from the food you eat to the news, the music you consume, everything, your whole complete diet, your mental diet, your physical diet. It's actually a pretty simple formula. It's simple in theory, is ruthlessly remove negativity from your life. I'm not saying you're ever going to be able to avoid negativity. I'm not one of these people who say, think positive all the time. That's just not natural. There's going to be dark times, but the dark is necessary. You see, and that's another thing. Don't run from that. Learn from it. Understand it. Integrate it, because it has a use. Your circle. Who do you surround yourself with? You know, what are you consuming? Do you listen to faggy music that tells you to, oh, I've never loved anybody like you before, and watching this new this is mass media programming, the shit you're watching on Netflix, where now the white guy is the demon and the transgender black chick is the hero, and she's the one that conquers the alien race. While, you know, she's got this, you know, luggish white dude stumbling along, making mistakes, and she's cleaning everything up. So anyway, my point is, do you get what I'm saying? So it's more than just one thing that what I would consider my forte. But if I had to put it in one word, it's mindset. But within that mindset, I can break it down to a bunch of little subcategories that we just really don't have time to go into tonight. But I hope you understand that. And I'd highly recommend you look at read Corey's books. It'll open your eyes to a whole new understanding of what that means and how it used to be. My father still has shrapnel. So, yeah, don't bother him about that if you don't want to talk about it. Look at that, getting props from Junior. Thank you, brother. He's a good fucking dude. Your philosophies are wisdom and invaluable. Thank you. And I'll tell you what, I've learned a lot from Lysander here. You know, him and I have been talking for years now. Years trading ideas and
years, literal years.
Yeah. I remember some long, deep 3-4 hour conversations we've had. V-Rex, awesome pops again. Gotcha. Thank you, brother. Lysander, are you familiar with Robert Bly's workshops?
Yeah, I'm not too big of a fan of the workshop, but I like that stuff. You know, Robert Bly and a few of the others, even like Joseph Campbell and all those guys, they're still too poetic. And the reason why I push back on a lot of I think their core ideas and core principles are good, but once they went into the realm of having a following, you know, anytime someone has a doctor or PhD or some type of degree in this stuff, they've been raised in the they've been raised in this corporate world, right, where a lot of political correctness and talking happen, right? So they're, in a way, I hate to say they're jargonites, but they're not going to ever deliver the true wisdom the way it needs to be delivered. And then the next thing is another thing that I say, this is even along the lines of like Jordan Peterson. Never trust a man who's never done violence or trained in violence to give you advice on violence.
I was going to touch on that when you were finished too, but go ahead.
So a lot of these guys have avoided violence because that was part of the generation they grew up in, right? They were told to go to college at a young age, become this type of academic, so to speak, and they speak academically, right? But the thing is, they're not warriors. So you have to take into consideration, especially when they start touching on like love and a few other things and nonviolence and so on. You really have to kind of filter a lot of their perspective, and it kind of is like a beta boy stuff, kind of a beta boy mindset. But they do have some things that need to be discussed, right? They have some pieces, but that's what I'm trying to tell you, I guess, is like compartmentalize what they say. Take the nuggets and run, but the majority of their stuff is kind of liberal crap.
Yeah, don't swim in it. Don't soak in it.
Even Jordan Peterson's liberal. Like, I hate to say it.
Yeah, he is.
He's a weak man.
But he's weak. But he has stuff to offer. He does definitely have some ideas and his own point about some things. And I love what you said about the violence thing. Every man should be working towards being lethal. I believe that. Like, me and my son were talking years ago, and I said, you want to find a way to avoid fighting? Learn how to fucking fight.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Learn to be mean as a fucking rattlesnake and lethal.
That's why I said the 3 disciplines that men need to practice today is lifting, fighting, shooting.
Yep. Absolutely.
Lift so you can be strong. It should all be supplements towards fighting. Honest to goodness.
And when it all comes down, and I'm getting up there in age, I'll be 48. I'll be 50 in 2 years. Can you fucking believe that?
I'll be 40 in February.
No shit. You still look young. You don't look much different from when I met you.
I'm feeling it.
Yeah, me too. I'm over here doing my shoulder because Venator Rex over there threw me in a Hanagoshi and dropped me on my fucking shoulder, a double arm Hanagoshi, and didn't let me have my hand. But that's all right. It was an accident. My shoulder's still tweaked up. And him and I are about to promote the purple belt. I don't even know if I can make it through the promotion.
Jeez.
We'll see.
You'll do it.
Yeah, I'll be all right. So yeah, and one of the things that I've noticed is my one of the most valuable things to me is my ability to be dangerous, to stay dangerous, to be a force. You know what I mean? I see men.
You can't ever give up your life force, and that's where I'm talking about too. Even with those veterans, is like, dude, you gave up your life force.
Yeah.
You know,
I see men, they look dead. They look like the Walking Dead, dude. And I'm thinking to myself, walking with my hot ass girlfriend, tall, blonde, and I'm thinking I could go over there and take whatever I want from that guy and he wouldn't do shit. And not that I would.
Right. It's just a thought though. I call those guys marks. Those guys are a mark, right? You can look at them and you can say that guy's a mark and know that you could do what you want.
I could, and there wouldn't be nothing I could intimidate him just by walking up. I wouldn't even have to put my hands on him.
For sure.
And but I can also see it reflecting from not only his body language, if he's got a girl with him, his wife, girlfriend, I can see it in their body language. I couldn't imagine. And this is what they're trying to do to men. Mind you, young men in this, I'm telling you to understand this. This is what they're trying to do to society. Docile men, tame men. I mean, what do you think that is? To make the world a safer place? No, sir. So they can take whatever they want from you. And yes, I definitely mirror your lift, shoot, fight. Like that's absolutely necessary. If anything, just to keep you tuned up. I mean, that makes me more alert, aware. It drives me. There's something about keeping the.
It makes you responsible.
Yes.
It makes you responsible. You're responsible to yourself. You're responsible to your family. You're responsible to your community by doing these things.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're proficient in these things, whenever I walk into a supermarket around here, people stop me and they ask me if I'm a celebrity. I'm not saying that as a means to toot my own horn, but people feel this thing that exudes from me where they think that they've seen me before and they think that I'm something important because of how I carry myself, right? I mean,
just out.
And I'm confident. Like I walk in places confidently, and not just being confident, but I'm alert. Right? Everywhere I go, I mean, my girlfriend notices this, and I tell her that too, but she notices it big time. I'm looking at everybody. I'm looking at everything, right? I'm responsible. I'm responsible. And that's the big thing is most people want to shirk responsibilities in all those departments. But doing these things, you become responsible. And it's a good, in the red pill space, we would bitch about this a lot. We'd say we have all the responsibility and none of the authority. Take back your authority.
Take the authority. That's not there to give away.
Dude, yeah, exactly. You're not going to get it through a vote. You're not going to get it through any of this shit. Become the man that you wish yourself to be, and you will receive the fucking authority you deserve.
And don't be so fucking apologetic about it. Just do it. Those guys. Yeah, it is what it is. I wouldn't say the shit if I didn't experience it, if I didn't do it myself.
For sure. Absolutely.
And so yeah, I experience that on dates a lot where they like, are you paying attention? You're looking all over. I said, no, I'm not looking all over. Like I'm looking. Like you don't look. You're the chick. You get to sit there and you get to
live in a nice little innocent bubble that I've created for you.
Yes, exactly. I'm looking so you don't have to, so you can enjoy taking selfies of your food. I got you back. I got you 6. You got nothing to worry about.
Yep.
Because I'm looking. I'm checking.
You live in your happy little bubble, and I will protect the borders and boundaries.
Exactly. Like you don't notice the guy on the other side of the bar before this band's about to start, stumbling a little bit, with his chest out and got some liquid courage in him, trying to bump the little people as they're walking through the crowd and giving them dirty looks. You don't see that guy. But I guarantee you, if you bump into him, you're going to want me over there. You know what I mean? So I'm just putting some fires out before they start. Just mind your place. And that's it. When you're born, you entered this life under the agreement you're going to be a man. I don't think people understand that. You already knew you were coming here. Yep. You may not know it now, but before you came here, you signed an agreement.
Contract. Yep. You signed a contract.
You're the fucking man. You're not going to get attaboys for everything you do. Probably more so than not. But you got to take your own attaboys. And your attaboys are when you look around, when you look at your body, when you look at your bank account, when you look at your girl, when you look at your family, when you look at situations, when you walk into a place that people notice you. That's your attaboys.
Yeah.
And it's up to you to create the attaboys in your own life. And part of that is you got to do the fucking heavy lifting. You got to open the pickle jars and beat away the bad guys. That's just the way it is. Mm-hmm. And you should do it with honor and pride and love. I mean, you hit the genetic. In my opinion, you hit the lottery being born a man in his life.
I agree.
Don't you think so? You ever hear the shit that comes out of women's mouth? I'd never want to be a woman. Some of the stuff my girls are like, baby, I'm sorry. You got to be a woman. There's no way. And that's, dude, we went a little over, but that's okay. It was a good, constructive, dude. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I told y'all this is going to be good. I really thought we could wrap it up this last part 2, but obviously we're going to need more time, which we could do this thing 5-part series for all I give a shit. It just gets better and better. And I suggest y'all all keep an eye out. We'll try to do it a little closer. I got really busy.
I thought this stretch wasn't bad, to be honest with you.
It wasn't terrible. It wasn't terrible at all. But obviously, I'm going to make part 3 sooner. And then, we talked backstage a little bit before about having maybe on a regular as doing a Q&A, a whole show just dedicated to this kind of stuff, questions about. And I'll be opening my Patreon soon. So I'd love to have you in. And, we can talk about some things that we really can't say on this platform.
Sure.
You get a little more in depth to be of real help certain things, especially, a lot of these young guys coming up to seeing about their place in the world, their place. And, when we talk about taking your authority and getting your attaboys because you've taken them, and what that looks like in relationships too. And I think that's important that people know their place, because a lot of young men don't understand where they're at and what their position is, and what is the most beneficial for you and her, that she doesn't even understand. And it's not her job to understand. It's for your job to understand and enforce. So I definitely want to get more in depth on that. So I've got the Patreon partially set up, guys. It's coming. I encourage all of y'all to come in and join that. It's going to be very inexpensive monthly. It'll be twice a week, dedicated Zoom call, 2 hours long, for your questions. And what I'm going to do is have people like Lysander and other influential guys in my life and in the space to guide and direct you into, by the time you're my age and his age, you've got the shit figured out. If I would have known this shit in my 20s, Lysander, like, what would you have done at knowing this stuff at 20 years old, which you know now? And I know we can't do it, and I'm not saying I regret anything, but setting these young men up for success in every area of life. And that's my mission. So, and then, of course, you're going to get to hear more. You're going to get to see more with Lysander and see about what he's setting up. He's setting up some really, really solid shit for the future. Really good. Like, he's talked a little bit. He's dabbled a little bit about, what his aspirations are as far as setting up mentorship and guidance and leadership for men, young men to follow and learn from, to change the course, change the whole course of your life. And I know it because I've been through it and I've seen it and I've done it. So that's all I can tell you. My stuff is battlefield tested. No offense. I know you really went on a battlefield. My stuff's been tested real world, and I know it works and I know it doesn't. And his as well. I'm not some guy who rents a cab of an airplane and takes selfies and tells you about how to make $1 million in 3 months. Like, my shit's real. And I have
real work.
Yeah. So again, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Lysander, for coming back on. And believe me, guys, y'all want to be here for part 3. You want to hear more. I especially wanted to get in depth. The reason I cut it short is because I don't want to have to cheat the iBoga experience. Cool. And I really want you to get into that and how much that. Thank you, brother. Kill the Tan. You talking to me or him?
To you.
Oh, okay. Thank you. It's that Louisiana sun. Louisiana, that's southern heat. Can't get out of it. And thanks everybody for coming. And y'all know I've touched a little bit on Patreon. I got some more guests coming up in the future. And again, we're going to have Lysander back for part 3. And then after that, we're going to do a Q&A show. So in the meantime, you can follow Lysander.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I'm going to have Joel. So we got to plug Joel, Sobriety University, my guy behind the scenes that makes all this possible. He's going to have Lysander's links, and all the stuff that was in our last stream is going to be available for you there to follow him on Instagram. The links to his books, which I suggest you read. Great material. And that's it. I think that's said enough. I'm just repeating myself. So thank you, everybody. Thanks again. And we're going to end it right here, y'all. See y'all next Wednesday.
Adios.